Hello and good morning, friends. Welcome to the CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friends, with our ongoing series on organization behavior, today we would be talking on knowledge sharing. We would be discussing what knowledge sharing is, what are the components of knowledge sharing, as well as the factors affecting knowledge sharing. We would be discussing in detail the models of knowledge sharing, benefits, as well as what can be done so that knowledge sharing could be promoted in the organizations. And for this discussion, we have once again with us in our studios Mr. Amuk Talan is Assistant Professor in College of Vocational Studies, Department of Commerce, University of Delhi. So let's welcome our guest Mr. Amuk Talan, and let's try to grab maximum knowledge through him on the topic knowledge sharing. Hello sir, welcome to today's lecture.
Good morning everyone. Today we are going to discuss a very important topic, knowledge sharing. Why I'm saying it's a very important topic is because in current scenario, especially in India, our economy is knowledge based. Most of our GDP is service sector based. Even the manufacturing sector that the government has tried or is planning on promoting through its various campaigning such as Made in India, etc., they basically highly rely on innovation. They want to import various technologies. They want technologies to develop in India. They want development to take place on the basis of knowledge itself. So that's why knowledge is a very important thing that should be covered in organizational behavior. We need to understand what are the factors that affect knowledge sharing, what are the consequences of knowledge sharing, how to promote knowledge sharing in an organization so that it would benefit government or organizations in general and help government implement its policies much better in the future. So starting with that, let's start with the basic concept of knowledge sharing. Knowledge sharing is an activity through which knowledge, namely information, skills, or expertise, is exchanged among people, friends, families, communities, or organizations. First of all, here, what we need to understand is that knowledge is a two-way process. Knowledge is not a commodity, it's not a tangible asset. You cannot hand over a knowledge to some person. It's a proper communication framework where you need to communicate that particular knowledge set to other individual who needs to comprehend that knowledge, and in return he needs to reciprocate, he needs to understand, and he need to, most importantly, he need to apply that particular knowledge in action. Only then that knowledge sharing activity is going to be beneficial. Coming back to this, organizations have recognized that knowledge constitutes a valuable intangible assets for creating and sustaining competitive advantage. So here we need to understand that, as I said, knowledge is not an tangible asset, it is an intangible asset. You cannot see knowledge, you cannot feel knowledge. Everybody has knowledge of some sort. Maybe some craftsman has knowledge of making, say, some pottery. Maybe some jewel smith has some expertise in making jewelry. In fact, a common person, if he is driving a bicycle, he has that expertise of how to ride a bicycle, which some of us may not have. These all are the knowledge that everyone consumes or has some kind of knowledge set in them. And the irony is that many of them may not even be aware of what kind of knowledge they have. So that's a very intangible asset. You cannot feel it, you cannot see it, and most of the people don't even realize the actual knowledge they possess or the extent of the knowledge they possess. But one thing that cannot be doubted is that knowledge helps bring competitive advantage in organizations. That is, first of all, here one more thing I need to tell is that in every organization, these days, organization does not rely on technology, they does not rely on investment, they does not rely on money, they does not rely on share markets. Most important assets in any organization is the knowledge that its employee or its stakeholders possess, because that's the thing that's going to help that company or the organization or even a country on a broader scale to move forward in future. that's the reason why so many organizations put all their efforts trying to retain its employees, because they do not, at any cost, they do not want the employees who have retained certain kind of knowledge set by working in the organization for a particular amount of time, leaving that organization and giving away that knowledge to some other maybe organization who's in competition with them. So that's the one thing every organization, in fact the countries, they focus so much on brain drain, because what's the worst thing of the brain drain? The worst thing about the brain drain is that our country makes a lot of people compatible for various high expertise job. They make genius. Our country is one of the top few of them which is focused so much on education, which provides so much subsidy on education, and we provide geniuses in our country. And ultimately what we see is that in the trend in say past 2 decades or even more, we are seeing that people are leaving the country and giving that particular knowledge that they have earned in our country to some other foreign country. So these are the challenges that organization or even the companies or the countries face these days. And if a company or an organization can overcome these challenges, and if it's able to retain those employees, then it's going to benefit in achieving competitive advantage over other companies, because organization is hard to find and knowledge is hard to find. And as we are going to cover in our lecture further, knowledge develops over time. It's not like you are given a particular book and you are supposed to learn that book. It's just information or data in front of you. You are just going to read it. It's not that after reading 100 books you are going to get any knowledge. Knowledge is gained over time. It requires a lot of effort. It requires a process of socialization. Again, these things we are going to cover in our lecture. And it's not so easy to acquire knowledge in short term. That's why every organization wants to keep its employees and keep its knowledge within its parameters so that it can gain competitive advantage over its rivals. One more thing I would like to point out is that knowledge, in fact, is so important that it's recognized globally right now. Most of the issues that India faces in its international meetings with international organizations such as WTO relate to say copyright or patent rights, etc., which are, again, these activities are knowledge based only. So what we need to keep in mind is that if there is proper knowledge framework, if there is proper knowledge sharing among not only the organization or not within the organization, if there is proper knowledge sharing among different countries and the countries sharing knowledge are given proper credit, then there would be no issues arising in any meeting of the WTO. All the issues that arise in international meeting is related to the benefits that some countries believe they are not receiving by giving away certain knowledge to other countries. So that's one more thing that we need to focus on. Coming back to knowledge sharing activities are generally supported by knowledge management systems such as ERPs or enterprise resource planning systems. However, technology constitutes only one of the many factors that affect the sharing of knowledge in organizations, such as organizational culture, trust, and incentives. Okay, now what we need to understand is that we do realize that most of the organizations, they do realize that it is very important for them to retain knowledge in their organization. However, most of the organizations see it in a more tangible manner in order to retain that knowledge within their organization, and for that they put a huge amount of resources. Enterprise resource system, to give a brief idea about enterprise resource system, I would like to say it is a kind of framework or a framework based on technologies, a software, a big software in fact, which is there in a corporation, and it connects all the sectors of the corporation, irrespective of the units, departments, or the countries in fact. say for example, what it does is that if you need to contact some particular employee regarding a query, you can put that query in that enterprise resource planning system, and maybe that person who has that particular knowledge or expertise, he may be located in some other part of the world, he may be in USA or he may be in Russia. So in order for communication to take place between these two people who want the knowledge exchanged, ERP helps. ERP is just a medium to connect two people together, or several groups in an organization connect together in order to share their common experiences, their queries, and their skills together on that particular software, and codify that particular knowledge. Again, we are going to cover this in more detail. Now, the one thing that most of the organization here make the mistake is that they invest millions of dollars in these kind of technologies. The ERP in a big corporation is not easy to get. Sometimes its cost exceeds millions of dollars, and an organization may invest in that, but ultimately many of the organizations, recent research suggested many organizations even went bankrupt, as far as going bankrupt, just because it invested so much money in that, thinking that it's going to give a huge yield to them in the future, ultimately just leaving that particular ERP software going to ruins. It didn't work out. And the reason why the research was conducted now, why these ERP softwares, after investing millions of dollars, why they are not working, it was realized that those organizations are only thinking from monetary point of view or extrinsic point of view. They are thinking that if they put lot of resources and money in their organization, then their knowledge sharing is going to be very high in the organization. But it doesn't work like that. There are several factors that affect knowledge sharing, and that's why this topic is so important, because we need to understand all those topics, all those factors that affect knowledge sharing, not just the technology. Technology obviously is the basic thing. Other factors which affect knowledge sharing may include interpersonal factors, organizational culture, environment, trust, incentive, motivational factors. All these factors affect knowledge sharing in an organization, and unless these things are recognized, unless, say for example here, unless trust is generated among employees, unless there's proper incentive given to the employees to propagate knowledge, unless there is a proper culture which is trained to share knowledge, unless management is supportive to propagate knowledge in the organization, unless proper rewards are given extrinsically or intrinsically to the organization, knowledge sharing is not going to take place no matter how many $1 million you are going to invest in the technology. Basically, we can see it from the perspective that, say a computer. What is a computer? It's a hardware. But is this hardware of any use if there's no software in it, if there's no operating system, if there's no Windows in it? It's completely useless. No matter how expensive your laptop is, it's just going to be of no use. It's going to be used only when you are going to get proper softwares installed. So that's the thing. The organization forget. They get that proper hardware, that technology in the organization. They invest in that. But they forget to keep in mind how employees' brain reacts and how the organization reacts, how the management reacts. They need to keep in mind those reactions. They need to train them. In fact, they need to understand. They need to give proper incentives. Only then that technology is going to be successful. Sharing of knowledge constitutes a major challenge in the field of knowledge management because some employees tend to resist sharing their knowledge with rest of the organization. Again, this point is very important, that even if organizations realize, okay, investing in technology is not enough and we need to encourage our employees to share knowledge, and that's the main crux of the knowledge sharing. Unless that happens, there won't be any knowledge sharing. But that's easier said than done. How are you going to insist those employees in sharing knowledge? If I possess certain knowledge, if I'm working in an organization, if I retain a particular unique knowledge in me, which I believe may help me in my career progression, why am I going to share that particular knowledge with other employees who I see as my competitors? Do I want them to benefit from that particular knowledge that I acquired from my hard working? But why would I do that? Now, that's the basic challenge. The company needs to overcome those basic instincts of individuals, of jealousy, of greed, of having that particular knowledge. They need to overcome that. They need to encourage those people. They need to make them, literally make them share knowledge with others. And for that, they need to devise strategies. Maybe give them enough money in terms of salary, maybe offer them promotion. But again, salary, some people don't value money that much. Some people do not value salary that much. I don't value salary that much. So the thing is, how are you going to encourage those people? Then there are other reward system, intrinsic reward. Some people naturally enjoy helping knowledge, helping people. They enjoy giving away their knowledge to others because they feel superior, in a way superior that way. If I possess some certain unique knowledge, and if I'm sharing it with others and they are appraising me, they are applauding me for sharing that knowledge, and they are appreciating, they are recognizing me that this guy is a genius, he is sharing so much knowledge with me, then that person is, maybe his ego would be satisfied, and maybe that would make him happy and make him share more knowledge in the future. So these are the intrinsic factors. Again, management has to devise certain training factors and development factors in order to encourage such activities in the organization. There are a lot of definitions of knowledge sharing that have been given by a lot of authors over a long period of time. There's this definition which comprises the crux of all or most of the definitions. It is the most comprehensive definition that we can see. Knowledge sharing may be defined as individual behaviors of giving and accepting knowledge which is explicit or tacit in nature, which would be helpful in their long as well as short-term career progression, which may be initiated due to persons' personal characteristics like attitude, emotional intelligence, and personality, or may be motivated by internal or external reward factors, and may be influenced by external factors such as trust and work engagement, which would ultimately lead to team and organizational effectiveness. Now, we are going to, in most of our lecture, we are going to cover most of the points that are not explained in this definition, but are certainly covered in the definition itself. This definition is very comprehensive. It tells you what is knowledge sharing. It tells you what knowledge sharing does. What is the ultimate aim of the knowledge sharing? To gain organizational effectiveness for organizational, to make organization better than other organizations, to gain competitive advantage. It tells you what are the factors that affect knowledge sharing. It tells you how to promote knowledge sharing. So we are going to, first I'm going to give a brief overview of these portions of this definition, and then we are going to do that in detail. First of all, we need to understand regarding knowledge sharing, we need to understand that it's individual behavior of giving and accepting knowledge. You cannot hand over some information to other person and expect that that person possesses that particular knowledge now. In order for a knowledge sharing process to take place, there has to be a particular process of giving and accepting knowledge, unless there is a receiver on the other end who's comprehending that particular information that you gave him, who's understanding, who's contemplating, who's making results out of it, who's applying that knowledge or information that you have given to that person. You cannot call it knowledge. It would just be a simple maybe data exchange, or it may be information exchange. That's it. Unless there's these two parties who are contemplating about the topics that are being discussed, the information, and there is proper comprehension of that particular topic, it would not be termed as knowledge sharing. Knowledge is of two types, explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge. Explicit knowledge would be something that can be codified easily. Say, for example, the final accounts of a company, balance sheet, trial balance, and P&L account, etc. You can call it explicit knowledge, and the rules regarding how to make those particular account, all those parts together make explicit knowledge, because that's codified. If there are rules regarding how to make accounts, a newcomer can read those rules, and to a certain extent he would be able to understand how to make accounts, because that's a kind of scientific thing. You just need to follow the rules and your work would be done. Okay, that's easier to communicate. Explicit knowledge is much easier to communicate. Tacit knowledge, on the other hand, is a very complicated process. First of all, tacit knowledge, you cannot see it. The holder of the tacit knowledge, even he may not be able to realize the full extent of the knowledge that he has about particular things. And definitely, you cannot write tacit knowledge down, and you cannot communicate it tacit knowledge through books or through written documents. Means you cannot codify tacit knowledge. Say, for example, a basic example, riding a bicycle. Can you, most of us ride bicycle, have ridden bicycles in our lives. You know how to ride a bicycle. Can you write down proper procedure on how to ride a bicycle, and can you expect anyone who does not know how to ride a bicycle read that 2 pages of your write-up and be able to ride bicycle the next day? It's impossible. You cannot teach those kind of things. Craftsman, he makes so many things. He makes so many, say, pottery or toys, etc. He's gained that skills over years, even decades, that he's probably learned from his, say, family or from some particular institutions. He refines his knowledge over time. Now, if you need to go, you want to make just as good as crafts as he does, can you just go and ask him how to do that? And even if he is sincere enough to tell you everything he can tell you, can you still do as good as a job? Obviously not. So these are the things that tacit knowledge is knowledge that is gained by particular individuals over a long period of time through integration of various skills, through a lot of failures in the process, through learning experiences. And from that he learns particular things that comprise tacit knowledge, which he can do a particular job extremely well after that. However, he cannot communicate, unfortunately. He cannot write down the process of how to do that particular kind of thing. That's explicit and tacit knowledge. Knowledge sharing helps an individual in both his long-term and in short-term career progression. Most of the individuals realize that if they have knowledge, as I said, this could be one of the motivational factors that organizations can use. Employees leave an organization thinking that they are going to be benefited in long term, and it's only them they are going to get benefited, and they don't owe anyone in the organization, and it's just going to, if they are going to leave the organization and use that particular knowledge set in a new organization, then they are going to be well off. However, the ignorance is here. Ignorance here of those particular employees is that they don't realize if they leave that particular organization with that particular knowledge set just because they don't want to share that particular knowledge. How do they expect that the new organization would not again insist them on sharing that particular knowledge with others in that new organization which they have joined? Ultimately, at any point of time, they have to share that particular knowledge, or they have to face a rebuke from the organization, and it's not going to be good for their career. So that's again, knowledge sharing is ultimately, no matter how hard it may an employee may find it in a short term, it's going to be beneficial in the long term. It's a personal characteristic of the individual, which may be affected by, say, the basic personal trait that you cannot train, you cannot change. The personality of the individuals, the attitude, the emotional intelligence, personality. Let me give a brief idea again. Someone is extrovert. likely, research has also suggested extroverts tend to share more knowledge because they interact with people more. And as I said, tacit knowledge basically is based on your social networks. More you socialize, more you end up sharing knowledge with others. Agreeable people, they tend to be more friendly with others. They tend to be more cooperative with others. Those people are going to share more knowledge. Emotionally intelligent people. If I'm emotionally intelligent, I understand what another person is going through. I can manipulate that particular emotion. I can understand that particular emotion. Then I find some kind of affinity with that kind of person. I find some closeness with that kind of person. And what that means is that I would be more willing to help him in any way possible, not just knowledge sharing, in any way possible. I would be able to help him. But if he is in need of certain knowledge, then obviously I'm going to give him that particular knowledge. It could be motivated by intrinsic or extrinsic rewards. Again, rewards could be extrinsic or intrinsic. Extrinsic rewards could be something that you can feel, you can convert into monetary benefits. Organization can provide you easily. Say, for example, bonus, salary, even jobs and promotion, which are intangible, but however, ultimately they are related to some tangible benefit of higher money. If you are given a higher status, etc., then ultimately some sort of monetary benefit or power benefit is attached to it. Intrinsic motivation would be your inner enjoyment of helping someone out. Altruism is a very good example. Some people are born altruistic. They love to enjoy helping people for no reason, for nothing to expect in return from them. They help those people for the sole reason that they just enjoy it. It's just in their nature. If a person is altruistic, he's going to share more knowledge with others. We are going to cover these things again in detail. Ultimately, knowledge sharing is also affected by extrinsic factors, external factors such as trust and motivation. If there's trust, again, this is something that management can control to a great extent. Trust in the organization, trust. People in organization either trust each other or they don't trust each other. Employees may either trust each other or they don't trust each other. In that case, employees can be motivated by the management through various training programs or through other incentives to increase trust among. They could have some counseling sessions between them. If there is any contention between different employees, they can encourage them to have more open talking with each other, generate trust in them. If there's more trust between individuals in an organization, they share more knowledge. Similarly, work environment. Make work environment user friendly, make them more comfortable, make them feel more comfortable. There should be no such hardcore hierarchy in an organization. They should be given more flexibility. They should be made to feel that organization is their family, not that they are just a small worker in the organization. And lastly, it brings team or organizational effectiveness. As I said, knowledge sharing is the biggest asset in country like India, it being knowledge based. And if there is proper knowledge sharing in the organization, then obviously it's going to, and if it's able to retain those employees who possess that particular knowledge, it's going to be more effective than other organizations which are in competition with. So that's the thing about definition. We are going to cover everything in more detail. So here let's take a small break. Thank you. Welcome everyone. So today we are discussing the topic knowledge sharing. Knowledge sharing, first of all, knowledge sharing is a part of knowledge management. Knowledge management is a much broader aspect, and knowledge sharing is only just one aspect of knowledge management, but undoubtedly knowledge sharing is one of the most prominent part of the knowledge management. Knowledge management, let's talk a little bit about that. Knowledge management is a process of capturing, developing, sharing, and effectively using organizational knowledge. It refers to multidisciplined approach to achieving organizational objectives by achieving the best use of the knowledge. So here, knowledge management is a very broad aspect. It takes care of all the dimensions related to knowledge, not just the knowledge sharing. Knowledge sharing is one dimension. But before knowledge sharing takes place, knowledge has to be captured, knowledge has to be generated, it has to be developed, new knowledge has to be developed, and it has to be effectively used. And unless that happens, there's no point of knowledge sharing. The knowledge won't be shared. But as I said, knowledge sharing ultimately is the most important part. No matter how much knowledge you generate in your organization, no matter how many employees you hire, how many employees you import from other countries, recruit from other countries, it's going to be of no use unless there's proper knowledge sharing in your organization. So, in order to achieve organizational activities and to use the best use of the knowledge, there has to be proper knowledge management system installed. Many large companies, public institutions, and non-profit organizations have resources dedicated to internal knowledge sharing efforts, often as part of their business strategy, information technology, or human resource management departments. So here again, one thing we need to note is that as I said earlier also, lot of organizations share millions of dollars in their organization. They devote so much money in their organization just for the sake of knowledge sharing. They want to propagate knowledge sharing in their organization. But most of the organization, the mistake they commit is that they share that much resources in information technology. However, the trend is changing. People are realizing, organizations are realizing, and now they have been investing resources in human resource management and strategy frameworks. Now, what does human resource management and strategy management going to help in? Human resource management, first of all, it's going to be helping the organization by encouraging employees. Human resource management is concerned with motivating employees, recruiting employees, encouraging employees. Human resource management, by investing money in that department, organizations can make sure that the organization properly uses and transfers that knowledge through its employees. It's the job of the human resource management. Strategy now, the reason for investing in this strategy is that strategy relates different aspects, different parts of the organization, different components of the organization, no matter wherever they are situated in the world. They integrate them, integrating the department, integrating the units, integrating the branches of the corporation or the organization. That's the strategy formulation. And unless there is a proper integration among not just the employees, but the departments, the organization itself, different units, and different units established in different countries, unless there is that much integration, knowledge sharing is not going to take place. So organizations are getting more wiser, they are realizing this, and they are investing resources in these particular topics these days. Sometimes several consulting companies provide strategy and advices regarding knowledge sharing to their organizations also. Some small companies usually, they are not able to invest that many resources by themselves. Maybe they don't realize how to conduct all the procedures of how to encourage knowledge sharing in their organization, etc. For that reason, they hire consultancy companies which suggest them regarding the strategies, regarding the investment, regarding human resource, outsourcing human resource management, etc. These kind of activities. Now, let's talk about knowledge sharing efforts by the organizations. Knowledge sharing efforts typically focus on organizational objectives such as improved performance, competitive advantage, innovation, the sharing of lessons learned, integration and continuous improvement of the organization. So basically what knowledge sharing effort does is that it talks about competitive advantages through innovation and learned lessons, integration, continuous improvement. There has to be continuous improvement and there has to be innovation in the organization which uses that particular knowledge that is being shared. Unless that particular knowledge shared is put in use, unless it leads in development and innovation, that knowledge sharing is of no use again. Knowledge sharing efforts need to focus in that particular direction, how to make use of that knowledge shared in the organization. Integration and continuous improvement of the organization has to take place through that knowledge sharing process, and it's part of the strategy. Organizations always need to focus on a long-term strategy. They need to understand how to make their organization develop through that particular knowledge shared in the organization. Knowledge sharing efforts overlap with organizational learning, adapting and improving, and may be distinguished from that by a greater focus on sharing of knowledge as a strategic effort. As I said, knowledge sharing is a strategic effort. It needs to be incorporated in long-term strategy of the organization, and unless strategy plays a major role in that, knowledge sharing is going to be of no use. I mean, ultimate goal of any organization is to apply that knowledge in the results. Every organization needs certain results, either monetary or maybe some social results. But the thing is, it wants results. How is going to get the results? It's by utilizing that particular knowledge shared in the organization. Successful knowledge sharing efforts needs to convert internalized tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge to share it. And the same effort must permit individuals to internalize and make personally meaningful any codified knowledge retrieved from the knowledge sharing effort. Specifically for knowledge sharing to be made explicit, it needs to be translated into information. Okay, one thing, most important thing here that we need to understand is that, as I said, tacit knowledge you cannot communicate, you cannot codify that particular knowledge. And however, organizations, if organization hires a very skilled worker, it's obviously organization is going to want that particular employee to share those experiences, those knowledge with other employees. He wants all other employees to be just as good as that particular employee that he hired. I mean, that's how he's going to be of the best asset of the company. So that's the most important factor, or the most challenging factor for any company, how to make him share that particular knowledge. But he has a tacit knowledge, and as we already said, as the researchers have already said, you cannot codify particular tacit knowledge. Now, how to make that into explicit knowledge? Unless tacit knowledge is made explicit, people cannot learn that. Other people cannot learn that particular knowledge. Now, the strategy companies adopt in this framework is that, say for example, I'm going to take example of a surgeon. Surgeon, he has a lot of tacit knowledge. Over, say for example, he's worked 10 years in surgery department, and he has lot of experience of how to conduct the best of the operations that he can do. And hospital wants him to communicate the same thing to other employees of his company. Now he needs to make that knowledge explicit. First thing he's going to do is that He's going to try to codify it as much as possible. However, he cannot do that. Not all of it at least. He's going to write documents on how to conduct particular procedures. That's the first step. He's going to try to codify as much as possible, and that's what books are. What are books? Books are just an attempt to codify or to make tacit knowledge explicit. Books are nothing else. You cannot read a book unless you have a basic understanding and understand everything about the book and become a genius. That doesn't happen. If that happened, everyone studying a book would be a topper in the exam. Going to get back to that also. However, in my example, now that surgeon has written a book for his students. Those students are going to read that particular book and maybe gain 30 to 40% of the knowledge that that particular surgeon had, or even lesser than that, just from the books that he has written. However, if those after they have become genius, if they have learned all the books that are written by that particular surgeon, students are made to perform a surgery. I don't think any one of them would be able to. It's next to impossible. They won't be able to perform a surgery because they don't have that particular tacit knowledge. Now that tacit knowledge cannot be given by the doctor to his students. For that, government or other hospitals have come up with apprenticeship training programs where they join particular group of students with a higher ranking doctor in their organization, and they are made to observe that doctor conduct different operations, surgeries, and other parts, other responsibilities that he has to do in the organization or the hospital. Because unless they see it hands-on, or maybe in that particular group, once the doctor gains confidence of particular students, he has confidence in some student, he may allow them to perform minor surgeries at first. That gives them experience. That gives those students experience. Over time, training with a doctor, training with a chartered accountant, these are the same things. And these training takes as much time, if not more, a good training, as much time or more as they have spent studying the books, because that's more important. They just have the bookish knowledge. They just have explicit knowledge. Unless they want to make that tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge into tacit, they need to be just as proficient as their doctor or their chartered accountant. They need to understand how they do the work, and over time, over the years, they need to develop that skills with that particular doctor, and ultimately they are going to get that tacit knowledge also. So what do we understand here? How those say spending 5 years with the doctors, how did those intern ultimately gain that particular tacit knowledge? It's because of the process of socialization. They socialized. They understood how the things work from hands-on experience. Doctor made him do the works. So specifically for knowledge to be made explicit, it must first be translated into information. What did I just say? First of all, for tacit knowledge to be made explicit, it needs to be put in the form of information. As I said, a surgeon would first need to write a book at least, or at least recommend a book on how to do basic things, because we are going to cover this also, that explicit and tacit knowledge cannot exist individually. They complement each other. One knowledge without the other is useless. If you want to become a good doctor, you cannot expect to become a good doctor by just working with the doctor individually and ignoring the books in the courses. You cannot exempt your MBBS course and directly work with the doctor thinking that over time you are going to become just as good of a doctor. You need that particular explicit knowledge of the books. However, as I said earlier also, explicit knowledge in the books, again, is going to be useless unless that particular knowledge is put to use or is observed through the apprenticeship training with the doctor. Again, they complement each other. Nonaka is a famous researcher in the field of knowledge sharing. He proposed a model, SECI, standing for Socialization, Externalization, Combination, and Internalization, which considers a spiraling knowledge process integration between explicit and tacit knowledge. In this process, knowledge follows a cycle in which the implicit knowledge is externalized to become extracted to become explicit knowledge, and explicit knowledge is re-internalized to implicit knowledge. Now, this is a very interesting model. In this slide, you can see this model. There are 4 quadrants of this model: socialization, externalization, internalization, and combination. Socialization is a process where tacit knowledge is converted into tacit knowledge only. Now, what does that mean? When I'm talking to my friends in general, a very frank discussion with my friends, that means that I'm communicating certain things to them and they are communicating certain things to me. We are not writing down anything. We are not relying on any written sources. We are sharing stories with each other. We are sharing movie stories with each other. And ultimately, that particular socialization process over time, over a lot of years, is going to communicate some hidden knowledge between us. Over a time, that's why 2 individuals who've known each other for a particular long period of time, they say that they have a better understanding of each other. What does that mean? Better understanding of what? Better understanding that they know what kind of knowledge the other person possesses. They know their actions. The other person would be able to predict their actions on the basis of the knowledge that they possess. They know what kind of knowledge they possess. Because of the informal communication, they have realized what kind of knowledge they have. It is very most important step in the organization these days, socialization, tacit. Make people talk to each other informally. Make people learn from informal networks. Then the second step is externalization. Externalization in that explicit, tacit knowledge is made into explicit knowledge. In this, the tacit knowledge that a person has gained. Now, when I'm talking about from a organizational point of view, I would expect the organization that it makes its employees who've gained tacit knowledge from their social network, from talking to their colleagues, their manager, from their friends. I think the organization would be able to convince those particular employees into making that particular tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge. What's the need to make that particular tacit knowledge into explicit? Because that particular knowledge that they have gained over time, the organization wants that knowledge to reach many more people and not just that particular holder of that knowledge. And that knowledge should reach as many people as possible for the benefit of the organization. As I said, not just the benefit of the organization, but for the benefit of the employee also in the long term. If he starts to conceal knowledge and he does not share knowledge, thinking that it's going to benefit to him, he's bound to fail in the future. He's bound to fail. People are going to lose trust in him. He's not going to use that particular knowledge in front of others in the fear that if he shares that particular set of knowledge, he's going to lose that knowledge, and that's just false. Even in our ancient texts, it's written that knowledge spreads by spreading knowledge. Knowledge gains. Knowledge increases by spreading knowledge. So that's the process of externalization. It needs to make tacit knowledge into explicit. How is going to do that? Maybe making employees write as much as possible from what they have learned. ERP softwares, enterprise resource planning softwares. The reason for the implementation, spending millions of dollars in that, is just this particular thing. Tacit to explicit knowledge, tacit to explicit. This is the reason why organizations spend millions of dollars in those ERP softwares, because they want employees to share their thoughts, their beliefs, their actions, their skills, their expertise on that particular software, so that everyone accessing that software in the world, around the organization, in different units, different departments, would be able to access that particular knowledge after that knowledge is shared on that particular network. This is one of the tactics. We are going to discuss more tactics that way. Then comes this phase, combination, which combines explicit knowledge into explicit knowledge. Now what does that mean? Explicit knowledge into explicit. It means that explicit knowledge is of no use if it's incomprehensible. If I'm going to provide, say for example, a tacit explicit knowledge, balance sheet of an organization, what use is the balance sheet of the organization unless I'm given a wide variety of the accounts of the organization, such as P&L account, the trial balance, etc. If I'm going to do a proper financial analysis, what use is that particular balance sheet? That balance sheet would not be of any use unless it's combined with other resources, making that balance sheet more comprehensible. Unless I understand how the company has reached those particular figures of the assets, of those the stocks, the bonds, etc. What is the basis of investment? Unless I receive all the documentation of that, I'm never going to make an informed decision in the organization. For that, company needs to make explicit knowledge into explicit, meaning combination, meaning it needs to combine all the sources of explicit knowledge, all the documents, balance sheet, trial balance, and different accounts of the organization in order to make more sense out of those accounts if I need to look at those accounts. That's the combination strategy. Last part of this model is internalization, making explicit knowledge tacit. Now this is the most difficult part. Explicit knowledge, now it's put, say for example, again I'll talk about ERP software, because most of the organizations these days, even the government organization, even if they are not able to afford such complicated, comprehensive ERP softwares, they do hire basic ERP software such as Tally. Everyone is familiar with Tally. What is a Tally? Tally handles accounts and it handles all the transactions taken place in a company. That's Tally, that's ERP. However, big multinational companies hire much more sophisticated, much more expensive ERP softwares. The basic concept of the ERP is the knowledge sharing. Explicit into tacit. There are certain, now I knew a particular knowledge set, it was tacit, and I wrote it down on the ERP. I've written it down on the ERP. Now I expect people to read that particular knowledge and expect them to learn from that particular knowledge. Is that going to happen? Again, the example that I gave in the beginning, I know how to ride a bicycle. If I have to write one page write-up on how to ride a bicycle, maybe I would be able to write pretty good. I'm a good writer. I'll be able to write how to ride a bicycle, how to hold the handle, how to pedal, how to do this and that. Ultimately, I'm 100% confident no one in the world would be able to write as good as I write. No one would be able to read it and be able to ride a bicycle unless there's some tacit knowledge involved in that, unless I train them personally, unless I show them how to do that. Making explicit knowledge into tacit. If explicit knowledge is fed into ERP softwares and I have to make it into a tacit knowledge, then what happens in an organization, in ERP softwares, I read a write-up of some person that he has that particular knowledge. I may access that person, knowledge repository, that's what it's called. Knowledge repository shows the people, the expertise located at various parts of the organization and various parts of the world. And I can locate them, those people. I can, first of all, I need to read the write-up what they have given me, and the parts that I don't understand and the thing that he cannot communicate in that particular document, then I'll seek his help and understand through his personal help. And that's how you make explicit knowledge into tacit through the process of internalization. Now, once I've gained that particular tacit knowledge, what am I going to do? The entire process repeats. Tacit into tacit through socialization. I'm going to communicate that to other employees. I'm going to talk about it to other people that this is what I've learned. This is what's going to benefit the organization. And again, the entire process repeats itself. It's a very nice model by Nonaka. Let's talk more about this model. Socialization with the state tacit, converting tacit into tacit. Tacit knowledge goes beyond the boundary, and the new knowledge is created by using the process of interactions, observations, discussions, analyzing and spending time together, living in the same environment. Basically, socialization is talking about socialization. Unless there is socialization, unless people talk to each other, unless they are freely able to exchange their ideas, unless there is trust between the people in the organization, there's not going to be any transfer of knowledge and not going to be any tacit knowledge transfer. It has to be socialization. Socialization is also known as converting new knowledge through shared experience. You share an experience, you learn an experience, you need to share it with others. Unless that happens, the organization is not going to benefit. Organization gain new knowledge from outside its boundary, also like interacting with customers, suppliers, and other stakeholders. Now, this is the important part. Socialization does not only occur between employees and employees or between employees and the managers. Socialization is a process where two individuals interact with each other irrespective of their position and irrespective of their position in the organization. They may be related to other customers, other stakeholders, suppliers. All these people who are interacting with the organization, they give feedback to the organization over time, and that's what where the socialization takes place. An employee, no matter how high his rank is, a manager, he may have some sort of socialization interaction with the customers of the company who he never has to personally deal with. But maybe after dealing with the customers, he may gain some important insights and he may implement that in the process. This occurs in the traditional environment where, now we have an example, where a son learns a technique of woodcraft from his father by working with him rather than from reading from the books or manuals or apprenticeship training with an accountant or a doctor, as I said, the example I gave. A craftsman, usually in India, again, this is a very important topic for India because knowledge in India traditionally have been shared generation to generation. Craftsmen have been sharing it from father to son or from family to family, the family members. And that's how the process of socialization helps in transferring tacit knowledge to tacit knowledge.
We believe that we have learned a lot from Mr. Amok Talan today, and dear friends, we believe that you might have lots of questions to ask, so do write to us at info.cec@nic.in. We'll try to give answers to your questions when the next time Mr. Amok Talan visits our studio. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.